Roland looked up at the ceiling. It was the same shabby ceiling that was there yesterday. He gave out a sigh and looked around, his mood dropping even further. It wasn't a dream after all. Just to be sure, he thought about bringing up the status window. It appeared in a flash. That sickness status isn't there anymore. I guess I've made a full recovery. The man in the child's body strained his memory, trying to recall what this kid normally did the whole day. Did he need to interact with his family? Did he have to act like a brat? Would they find out that someone else was inhabiting this body if he acted strangely? Were some questions that he was asking himself. He also thought back to yesterday and to the woman named Martha. He tried probing her about the sickness. The woman didn't know anything about it, and the doctor didn't look into it either. Maybe I shouldn't have told her about that glowing mist. He muttered to himself. He felt that him telling the old maid what happened was not something that he would normally do. He was mostly mistrustful of others, not really sharing his feelings with just anyone. Are this kid's memories affecting me or something? He knew the child's original owner was very fond of this woman. He remembered that she was the only person that was kind towards him. No one else from his so-called family bothered with him, and the other servants were also very cold. Don't think she will do anything drastic. He went back to thinking about his next step. He needed to find some way to fit into this strange game-like world and maybe find a way back to his old one. The thought of murder trucks chasing him was still bothering him. While getting up from his bed, he heard a knock on the door. His maid Martha walked in with some bread, water, and what looked to be meat. "Young master, you should still rest." She placed the food on a nearby table and moved towards the child, concern on her face. "I'm fine. The sickness status isn't even there anymore," he replied while not wanting to go back into that bed. He spent an entire day there just looking up at the ceiling and his status screen. He was bored out of his mind, and there were no such things like the internet in this world. What he needed is more information. He knew that this place had a library, and as the son of the Baron he was allowed to go through it from the child's memories. He knew that this was mostly what this kid did. Probably this was why his intelligence stat was so high. "Is that so? Young master, your father wants to see you later in the day. Keep that in mind. Let me help you get dressed first." That was a quick change in attitude. The mention of no status effects was enough to deem a person cured apparently. "He wants to see me. What was this about?" He racked his brain and couldn't recall any recent memories where his father paid any attention to him. Could he be worried about Roland's health? But why now? Did he mention why? Martha placed her hand on his head and patted his hair. She was also helping him put on some clothes. It looked like some kind of tunic and pants combo, quite plain looking. He probably just wants to see his youngest son. "Be happy, young master, you have a chance to meet your father." The maid sounded really happy that the Baron wanted to see him. It made it seem like it was some kind of big honor that he was even allowed to see that man. Is there some kind of etiquette for things like this? There is nothing in this kid's memories about these things. Finally, master decided you. This is your big chance, young master. The maid named Martha was quite happy. In her eyes this was a joyous occasion. Roland, on the other hand, was quite skittish. He feared that he might act out of line and get himself in some kind of trouble with his so-called father. "He won't order some kind of lashing if I act out of line, will he?" The only thing about nobles that he knew was from history. They were rumored to be snotty and prone to violence and took their reputation very seriously. While Roland's imagination was pushing him into a certain direction, he finished eating and getting dressed. The food was quite plain, just some white bread, water, and a large sausage which tasted funny. "Martha, I want to go to the library." The books in his room weren't what he was looking for. He wanted to see where he was. He needed some history books or ones about geography. A map of where he was would be nice too. He wanted to know where he ended up. Besides knowing the name, he had no idea what this place was. "The library. Think that's okay, but be sure not to spend too long. You have to remember the Lord's order." By the looks of it, this meeting couldn't be avoided. His maid would probably drag him there even if he refused. He finally left his room and could stretch his legs. He was on the top floor in a side wing of the Arden family mansion. He was someone that had spent his life living in small apartments and lofts, so this place felt huge. Think a baron is on the bottom of the noble ladder. I guess a noble is still a noble. He stepped outside. The door that led out of his room creaked as if he was in a haunted house. Thanks to the original Roland's memories, he knew exactly where the library was located. The boy was quite smart when it came to studying, but he felt like he had holes in his knowledge. The process that passed the memories of the original Roland wasn't perfect. He could see some servants here and there, but no one really paid any attention to him. He thought that as a young noble he would be greeted or receive a bow. This didn't happen. The people looked in his direction but went on their way as if he wasn't there. I guess that's how an illegitimate son would be treated. He remembered that he was a bastard, someone that was born from a commoner that the Baron had his way with. He still had no idea what his mother was up to, but he was sure that she wasn't in this mansion. They finally arrived at the library. The doors were large and old and screeched when he opened them up as well. Inside he saw shelves with various books. The place looked very old and was dusty. The servants didn't take care of it as the Baron focused more on practical things like swordsmanship. Ah yes, the only bookworm of the family. Martha left. This was a place that the young Roland visited frequently. Most of the time he just took some books that were interesting, like fables and tales about legendary heroes. No one bothered him here and he didn't need to fear his older brothers that didn't seem to like him all too much. Okay. I need to find some kind of map. Where am I and how big is this country? He was short at about 105 centimeters, which was normal for a child his age. Due to this, he needed a chair if he wanted to reach the books that were placed on higher shelves. Why do they have this library if no one even uses it? He rummaged through everything and managed to find some history and geography books. There was even a map with the names of the countries. The country I'm in was called the Kingdom of Caldris. The map was a bit dusty and the ink was slightly faded, but it was readable. So I'm here. The map that he was able to procure wasn't a world map but just of the continent that he was on. This was enough to get a general idea. His country had 4 other countries around it, which wasn't good from a military standpoint. Hope those countries don't decide to invade us. He went through the books that he grabbed and soon found out the power of his fast learning and memory retention trait. He could remember most of what he had read on the previous page. His learning speed was astonishing. I could have used this back at the college days. Maybe I can become a scholar or a court official in this world. If they have anything like that. He was unsure of his future, but he would rather be a researcher than a knight. Damn, these history books are too vague. How old is this even? The books weren't helping that much without a reference point. He forgot to ask his maid about the era he was in. He didn't know what year it was either. The geography books were more helpful though. From them he found out that the kingdom that he was living in was fairly large. It was even larger than the largest country that he knew back on Earth, surface-wise. This is only a partial map. Is this the only continent? If not, then this planet could be a lot bigger than Earth. He continued with the reading and finally found the name of the world that he was now on, along with its size. Huh. The planet's name is Terra. Think I've heard that somewhere before. The size? This isn't the metric system anymore. Do I need to find a math book now? He had the world name, but the size was unknown to him. He shrugged as it didn't really matter. Knowing that it was big was enough. While he was rummaging through the books he heard the large door opening up. Martha stepped through them, probably here to remind him about the appointment with his father. Young master, it's time. The new Roland felt nervous for some reason. He had a hard time remembering the Baron's face. The man didn't really visit him that often. The last time he saw him was on the boy's 4th birthday. On the 5th one, he didn't even receive a present from him, just a quiet party with his maid that brought him some cake. This is going to be awkward. Do I need to call that guy father? Well, he hit me if I annoy him. He was sure that he was the lowest ranked person from the whole family and he remembered that his older brothers didn't take him seriously either. He had to do it though, so he followed after his maid that guided him to the dining room. Are we going to eat dinner together or something? He racked his brain. He couldn't remember the last time Roland was invited to dine with his family. He mostly spent his days alone in his room reading books and dreaming about fun and adventure like any young boy his age. His maid stopped before the door to the dining room. She smiled at him but knew that she wasn't allowed to go any further. I will see you later, young master. He nodded and entered the room. Inside he saw a large table. Servants were bringing in food and drinks alike. Some of his brothers were already here, like the 3rd son Robert. The youth was 8 years old and the moment their eyes met he scoffed as if Roland wasn't supposed to be here. Robert just as him was someone that came from a commoner, but his mother was a mistress that was still living in this house. Thanks to this he still had a measure of respect. Roland just stood there for now as he wasn't sure if he was allowed to take a seat before the Baron arrived. Edwin the second son and Rainer the firstborn son arrived soon afterward. Besides them, there was his older sister Sophia and Diana that was the younger one. That Baron sure likes to party. 6 kids already, might be more on the way. Edwin and Rainer were sons from the main wife along with Sophia the first daughter. Diana along with Robert came from the second wife, aka the mistress. From Roland's reasoning, the first wife probably got older and the Baron switched to the younger version while making more kids along the way. I see being a noble has its perks. Roland wasn't someone who was very experienced with women. He had a fling with 2 back in his college days, but after he started working he had a long dry spell. The Baron and his wives arrived soon afterward, Tabitha the first wife and Francine the second one and the mistress. The Baron looked to be a big man. He had a nice gentleman-like mustache and a large scar running down from his left eyebrow all the way to his lip. He exuded a certain aura of a warrior. The noble clothes that he was wearing couldn't hide all the muscles underneath all too well. Damn, my dad is jacked. Everyone waited for the Baron to arrive. He sat at center stage, and then one by one starting from the main wife everyone sat down. Roland was sure to follow everyone's example and sit the furthest back right next to the third son. He could see the snarky 8-year-old glaring at him the moment he did that. "What you staring at, you little shit?" was the thing he wanted to shout out, but he remained quiet. Would be best if he didn't have to talk with anyone in here. The Baron was quiet and everyone just waited for him to start eating. The food on the table didn't taste all that great. The cuisine on Earth was a lot better compared to this bland meat they were having. "Rainer, how is your sword training going?" the Baron asked. "My basic sword mastery is already at level 6, father." The Baron started asking his kids about skills and the progress in their training. Apparently they were training and unlocking skills. They even mentioned the warrior class and something about it being tier 1. He wasn't sure what this meant as he himself didn't have anything like a class. While he was digesting the new information and trying not to stand out, he heard his father call out to him. "Roland." He flinched and looked up. Everyone was looking at him for some reason. It was more a look of surprise, some of his family members almost having forgotten that they had a 5-year-old sibling. "The doctor said that you contacted the mana sickness, also you saw some glowing mist, is that right?" "Glowing mist? Did Martha rat me out?" Why yes, father." He tried imitating his older brothers but stuttered slightly. Thankfully the buff-looking man didn't seem to mind it that much. "Mana sickness. Do you perhaps have a mana-related skill?" His father looked at him. Everyone else did the same as they waited for a reply. "Why yes, I have the mana sense skill." "What?" the oldest brother shouted out while looking at Roland, his eyes squinting. "What you staring at me like that for? I'm just answering the questions here." "Oh, mana sense. You're not lying to me, are you?" The Baron gave Roland an intense stare. The boy shrunk down as he felt as if he was getting rocks pilled up on him. "And no, I have it." He spoke out in a meek voice while the Baron rubbed his chin. "Is that so? Adam?" He could see the other kids and even the wives looking at him. It was as if he was doing something out of line, but they were afraid to speak up while the Baron was talking. A man with gray hair stepped out. He was wearing a black tux. "If the boy has the mana sense skill, we need to check. Bring someone who can perform a test. If he passes, look into procuring a tutor and some books related to magic." Roland looked at the large man that was asking the butler-looking fellow for some test. Was he about to get a magic teacher? Was it going to be that easy? He expected to have to scrape by being unnoticed, but here he was getting some preferential treatment out of nowhere. Was mana sense some rare skill? He could tell that his siblings weren't happy with this. Their expressions were easy to read as they were kids that weren't able to hide their emotions. Roland, on the other hand, was all smiles, just nodding while his Baron of a father continued to talk. Maybe I'm some kind of genius. Am I a wizard now?